We know what it feels like searching for something, anything, with which to defend ourselves, and realizing a pencil is about all we had.
And we crouched there, and some of my good colleagues and I began to pray.
Food service workers, staffers, children ran or hid for their lives.
Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. Personal accounts of terror from lawmakers as the MAGA mob ransacked the Capitol 1 month ago this weekend. In 2 days, President Trump will stand trial, stunningly at the scene of the crime in the U.S. Capitol, on charges that he incited that deadly terrorist attack. Joining us now, Congresswoman AyannaPressley, Democrat of Massachusetts, to talk about that and more. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. Yesterday marked 1 month since that insurrection. With former President Trump's impeachment trial set to start Tuesday, we're already seeing people questioning why this matters. Is it necessary? We need to move on. You lived through the events of January 6th. What do you say to people who say, come on, just move on?
Well, that's the problem. The reason why it took a violent insurrection, a white supremacist mob seizing the Capitol, waving the Confederate flag, erecting a noose on the west lawn of the Capitol, injury and loss of life, for many to appreciate the threat that white supremacy is to every American and to our democracy. The reason it took that incident, that harrowing, traumatic, those events on January 6th, is because as a country, we have been turning the page. If we really believe that this is a moment of reckoning in every way, then we must act accordingly. And that means that Donald J. Trump must be held accountable because he is culpable for having incited this insurrection by perpetuating this big lie. This House has twice done its job. He will forever be the twice impeached president by this Democratic majority-led House. And now the Senate must honor their oath and impeach Donald J. Trump to hold him accountable, but also to bar him from running for public office ever again. And then we know that he had accomplices who told on themselves in broad daylight. They aided and abetted this insurrection by perpetuating this big lie, and they must be expelled. And then we must continue to investigate, Jake, so that any individuals or agencies that enable this insurrection are taken to account. But let me just say this, for those that continue to feign great surprise about what happened on January 6th. As a Black woman, to be barricaded in my office using office furniture and water bottles on the ground in the dark, that terror, those moments of terror, is familiar in a deep and ancestral way for me. And I want us to do everything to ensure that a breach like this never occurs at the Capitol. But I want us to address the evil and scourge that is white supremacy in this nation. This is not only about securing the Capitol to ensure that members and our staffs and the custodial staff and food service workers are safe in the Capitol. It is that we are safe in America. And one of the images that I'm haunted by is the Black custodial staff cleaning up the mess left by that violent white supremacist mob. That is a metaphor for America. We have been cleaning up after violent white supremacist mobs for generations, and it must end. So impeach, expel, investigate.
Congresswoman, some House Democrats say they're afraid for their safety after the Capitol attack. I'll note that we're not even sharing your location this morning because you yourself have significant security concerns. Many of your colleagues blame the rhetoric coming from some House Republicans, in particular Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is, has been in the news lately for her bigoted and insane conspiracy theories. Simply put, do you feel safe going to work?
Look, I feel safe. Living with threats and living with bigots who are as vile in their rhetoric as they are in the policies that they seek and enact and the harm that they seek to cause the most marginalized communities, Black Americans in particular, is not new. Again, this is familiar in an ancestral sort of way. So it is not going to deter or obstruct me for doing my job on behalf of the American people. And that's why right now I'm continuing to fight and to center the American people to ensure that we have a COVID response that is that centers the people, that is robust and leaves no one behind. This pandemic has not discriminated, and so the relief must be robust and leave no one behind. It's also why I'm fighting to have the collection of anonymized demographic racial data in terms of vaccine recipients.
Yeah. I want to ask about that. I want to ask about the racial disparities that we're seeing in the coronavirus fight. Polls show vaccine hesitancy among minority communities remains high. White Americans are getting vaccinated at a much higher rate than Black Americans and Latino Americans, even though the virus hits Black and Latino communities harder. You've criticized the pace of vaccine distribution among minority communities. You call it vaccine redlining. Do you think the Biden administration is doing enough to address this problem? And if not, what more should they be doing specifically?
Well, first, let me just say I'm encouraged that we actually have a national strategy. Under the previous administration, we did not have a national strategy to slow the spread of this virus. And we did not have a national vaccine strategy. So now we have both of those things. But what I am looking for and calling on the administration to do, and is why Senator Warren, Markey, and myself sent a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services, is for us to collect in real time demographic anonymized data of vaccine recipients. We knew anecdotally, Jake, early on, what communities would be hardest hit because of unequal access to health care and the comorbidities of structural racism. We demanded the collection of that equitable data early on, myself and Senator Warren. And because of that, we were able to see just how dire the inequities were, and that informed how resources were marshaled. So I'm encouraged by what the administration is doing, but Congress must act, and we must embed in our response, in our relief package, the collection of that data, and this administration must collect this data so that we can save lives.
All right, Congresswoman, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.